I wake up at 4 hours and 30 minutes in the morning, every single day, like clockwork. The doctors say it's normal for my age. 78 is no joke. Normal doesn't mean pleasant. I lie in bed, listening to the clock ticking in the living room downstairs. It's a sound that echoes throughout the house when there's silence. It's always quiet. I turn on my side and look at the empty half of the bed. Miriam's pillow is still there, even though it's been 3 years. Sometimes I wake up and forget for a second that she's gone. I reach out to touch her shoulder, but my fingers meet only the cold fabric of the pillowcase. Miriam was dreaming again tonight. She was standing in our garden among the roses we planted together every spring. She was wearing that blue dress I had always loved. She was smiling and saying something, but I couldn't make out the words. I tried to move closer, but as is often the case in dreams, the distance between us only increased. There was no point in lying there any longer. I get out of bed, put on my robe and slippers. It's cool in the house. I'm saving on heating, a habit left over from when we were a young family on a tight budget. Now that I have enough money, that habit no longer makes sense. But old habits die hard, especially when no one is complaining about the cold. I walk down the stairs, holding on to the banister. My knee hurts again, my natural barometer. So it's going to rain. What does it matter, though? There's nowhere to go out anyway. My house is big. Too big for one person. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a spacious living room, a dining room where I haven't eaten in 2 years, a study where my books on pedagogy, the legacy of my career as a school principal, are gathering dust. Miriam and I bought this house 35 years ago when I took over as principal at the local St. George's School. It was bustling then. Children, their friends, family dinners on Sundays. In the kitchen, I put the kettle on. Tea is the only thing that has remained the same. Earl Grey, 1 spoonful of sugar. Miriam always said I drank tea like an aristocrat, weak but flavorful. She preferred it strong, almost black. I look out the window, at the garden, which is slowly overgrowing. I used to keep an eye on it, but I haven't gotten around to it lately. My knee gets in the way, and I'm not in the mood to tinker with plants alone. Miriam loved the garden, especially roses. She had a whole collection, tea roses, damask, variegated. After she died, I tried to tend them, but most of them died. Only the hardiest varieties remain, which manage to bloom despite my neglect. The kettle is whistling. I make tea and sit down at the kitchen table. A family calendar hangs on the wall. Miriam started this tradition when the children were young. I continue to buy these calendars every year, even though there's nothing to write in them. Today is Thursday, May 27th, an empty cage like all the others. I take the milk for oatmeal out of the fridge and notice it's sour. Damn, I forgot to go to the store again. My memory is failing me more and more lately. Little things slip through my mind like water through my fingers. I throw away the milk and decide to have toast and jam for breakfast. The house is so quiet you can hear the clock ticking in every room. Miriam and I had this quirk of collecting clocks. There are clocks in every room. They all tell different times. Since her death, I don't have the patience to synchronize them, and why should I? Time stretches differently for me now, somewhere faster, somewhere slower. I turn on the radio just to hear human voices. Some morning program, the anchors are discussing the latest news, politics, economics, incidents. It all seems so distant and insignificant. My world has narrowed down to the walls of this house. After breakfast, I go into the living room. There are pictures on the mantelpiece. Our wedding 54 years ago. Miriam in a white dress, me in a rented suit. Young, smiling, full of hope. The birth of Parker, our firstborn. Then Lilith. School pictures, graduations, children's weddings, the birth of grandchildren, an entire life framed. Taking in a photo taken on our golden anniversary, 4 years ago. Miriam was already sick, but she tried not to show it. In the picture, we are surrounded by children and grandchildren, all smiling, a happy family. It's been so different since she died. At first, the kids came by a lot. They checked how I was doing, brought food, helped with the house. Then the visits became less frequent. The calls got shorter. Everyone has their own life, problems, worries. I understand it in my head, but my heart still hurts. Parker, my oldest, 49 years old. Real estate appraiser, always busy, always in a hurry. Married to Tamsin, they have 2 kids, Orson and Marion. Live in the house I bought them as a wedding gift 25 years ago. A beautiful 2-story house in a nice neighborhood in Hastings. It was a serious investment for a school principal at the time, but I wanted my son to have his own place. Lilith, my daughter, 44 years old, accountant for a construction company. Married to Derek, a gym teacher. They have 1 daughter, Willow. They too live in the house I bought them, smaller than Parker's, but in a decent neighborhood too. I've always tried to help the kids, not spoil them, but support them. The principal's salary didn't allow for a lot of money, but Miriam and I lived modestly and invested in real estate. We bought houses, rented them out, saved up. By the time I retired, we had 7 properties, including our own house. 2 I gave to my children, the rest were bringing in a steady income. But after Miriam died, something changed. Not all at once, gradually. First, I noticed the impatience in Parker's voice when I called him. Then the way Lilith made excuses not to invite me to family dinners. The grandchildren stopped calling. At Christmas I was invited but sat in the corner and no one talked to me much. I felt superfluous. Last year for Father's Day, I waited for calls or visits. I didn't. It wasn't until that evening that Parker sent a text. "Happy Father's Day, Dad. Sorry, been busy." Lilith didn't even do that. I tried to talk to them. I asked them what I'd done to them. They said it was all right. They just had a lot on their plate. Work. Kids. But I saw the truth in their eyes. I was a burden. An old man who does nothing but reminisce about the past and complain about his health. Maybe they're right. I do talk about the past a lot. About the times when I was a respected school principal, when students and parents listened to my opinion, when I meant something. Now I'm just an elderly man with a bad knee and a longing for my dead wife. The phone rings unexpectedly, interrupting my unhappy thoughts. Lilith's name pops up on the screen. Strange. She rarely calls in the morning. "Hello?" My voice sounds hoarse from the long silence. "Hi, Dad." Lilith's voice sounds strained, like she's doing an unpleasant duty. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I answer shortly. I realized a long time ago that no one is interested in my detailed stories about how I'm feeling. "How are you?" "I'm fine. Listen, it's Willow's birthday on Saturday. She's turning 24. We're having a little party at the house. Thought you might want to come." There's no genuine desire in her voice to see me there. More like a sense of duty. Or maybe guilt. "On Saturday?" I ask again, though I remember my granddaughter's birthday perfectly well. May 29th. I don't forget things like that. "Yeah, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Nothing special, just family and a couple of her friends. Family. I wonder who she includes in that. Me, only by necessity, I guess. Of course I'll be there," I say after a pause. "Thank you for inviting me." "Okay, just," she stammers, and I already know what's coming next. "Dad, try not to talk about politics, okay? And your tenants. Willow's not really interested in hearing that. There it is. An unobtrusive reminder that my conversations are boring and inappropriate. "Of course, Lilith," I answer calmly, though my insides clench. "I'll be on my best behavior." "That's not what I meant," she says quickly, "but we both know it is. I just want everyone to be comfortable." "I understand. Don't worry about it." There's an awkward pause. Lilith and I used to be able to talk for hours. I used to help her with her homework when she was in high school. We'd talk about books, movies, her dreams for the future. Now it's like a wall between us. "Okay, I have to run to work, she finally says. I'll see you Saturday. See you Saturday, I answer and hear the phone ringing. She doesn't even ask if I need help getting to them. Their house is on the other side of town. There's no bus to get there, and I haven't driven a car in a long time. I'll have to call a cab. Another reminder that I'm no longer a priority. I go back to the pictures on the mantelpiece. There's Willow at her high school graduation. Beautiful girl, looks like Miriam when she was young. Same eyes, same smile. She was her grandmother's favorite. Miriam taught her how to bake cookies from a family recipe, told her stories about her childhood in Devon. After Grandma died, Willow came to visit me a few times. We'd have tea and reminisce about Miriam. Then she stopped. Granddaughter's birthday. We need to think of a present. What do you get a girl when she's 24? I have no idea. In the past, I would have asked Miriam. She always knew what would please the children and grandchildren. Now I have to decide for myself. Money? Too impersonal. A book? I don't know what she's reading now. Jewelry? Maybe. I have a box of Miriam's jewelry. She wanted me to give them to her granddaughters. I go into the bedroom and pull an old wooden box out of the closet. I open it. The smell of Miriam's perfume still lingers inside. I look through the jewelry. A pearl necklace, silver earrings, a gold bracelet with engraving. And suddenly I see it. A gold watch on a chain. It's old, from Miriam's grandmother. She only wore it on special occasions. I open the lid and inside it's engraved, "Time is the most precious gift." Perfect for Willow. I glance at my watch and think about the upcoming party. Part of me wants to go, to see the whole family together. The other part fears another disappointment, cold stares, polite but empty conversations. Miriam would say, "Go, Eustace. They're your family, no matter what." And I would go, for her sake, for the memory of a time when we were a real family. I put my watch in my robe pocket and walk to the window. It's starting to rain, just like I predicted. Droplets tap on the glass, blurring the outline of the garden. I wonder if Miriam's roses will survive another season without proper care. Some of them are surprisingly hardy, like myself, I suppose. It's settled. I'm going to Willow's birthday party. Give her my great-grandmother's watch. Try to reconnect with the kids. At 78, it's not too late to try, right? In the meantime, it's just another lonely day in a big, empty house. The radio in the kitchen is still on, the announcer's laughing at some joke. I go back in there to turn it off. Silence fills the house again. Only the clocks continue to count down, each in their own way. Saturday came faster than I expected. The first thing I did when I woke up was look at the calendar, even though I already knew what date it was. May 29th, Willow's birthday. 24 years ago, Lilith had called me from the maternity ward and I'd rushed there with a huge bouquet of pink tulips. Miriam was holding the tiny bundle then and crying with happiness. "Look, Eustace, we have a granddaughter." Now that granddaughter is a grown woman who barely finds time to say hello to me on rare occasions. When did this happen? At what point did I go from being a beloved grandfather to a burden? Getting out of bed, the first thing I did was pull my best suit out of the closet. It was a dark blue, wool suit bought 8 years ago for Miriam's brother's funeral. I've lost weight since then and the suit fits baggy, but I don't have another. Shirt, pinstripe tie, polished shoes, just the way you'd expect for a family reunion. I already packed Willow's gold watch last night. I'd found a gift box in the pantry, lined the inside with velvet fabric cut from Miriam's old pillow. She would approve of such a use. On top, he put a small card that read, "Dear Willow, happy birthday. This clock belonged to your great-grandmother. I hope it will remind you of your family roots. Love, Grandpa." It took me 3 tries to write that short note. The handwriting is no longer the same, my fingers are shaking. Another unfortunate reminder of age. I have my usual breakfast of toast and tea. No appetite. I'm as nervous about seeing my family as a schoolboy before an exam. It's funny, isn't it? At my age, after all I've seen and experienced. I turn on the TV, just to distract myself. It's a Saturday night gardening program. The presenter is talking about how to prune rose bushes. Miriam always watched this program, taking notes in her gardening notebook. I watch for about 10 minutes, then turn it off. The roses in the yard are almost dead without her care anyway. The party's still a few hours away. What can I do? I decide to clean up my office, the room I used for work when I was principal. There are still shelves of books on pedagogy, folders with documents, awards, and certificates in frames on the walls. I sit down at the massive oak desk and open a drawer. Inside are old letters from former students, greeting cards from colleagues, handwritten notes from presentations at teacher conferences. A whole life packed into cardboard boxes and wooden crates. I pull out one of the folders. St. George's School, Annual Report, Year 2005. My last year before retirement. I open it, flip through the pages. Photos, progress charts, reports on extracurricular activities. At the end, a letter from the Board of Trustees thanking me for 20 years of distinguished service as principal. Under Mr. Baycroft's leadership, St. George School has become one of the finest educational institutions in the region. His dedication to education, attention to the needs of each student, and innovative approach to administration deserve the highest praise. I was a good principal, strict but fair. Students respected me, parents listened to my opinion, colleagues valued my expertise. I meant something in this world. And now? Now I'm just an old man living in the past. Even my own children look at me with barely concealed impatience when I start talking about my work. Yeah, Dad, we know you were a great principal, Parker says, rolling his eyes. Why don't we discuss something more current? Lilith suggests, changing the subject. To them, my career, my accomplishments, are just old stories they've heard 1,000 times. They don't realize that without those stories, I am nothing. A waste of space, a useless old man who does nothing but take up space and consume oxygen. I close the folder and put it back on the shelf. My gaze falls on a framed photograph of me presenting diplomas to graduates. 2005, my last graduating class. Among them is Orwell Tyndale, a boy with amazing math skills. He won a scholarship to Cambridge, as I recall. I wonder where he is now. What has he achieved? Where am I now? Sitting in an empty house, going through old papers and preparing to meet a family that barely tolerates me. The clock on the wall reads 12 hours and 30 minutes. Time to get ready. The party starts at 15 o'clock, but I need to call a cab ahead of time. At my age, it's better to be early than late. I shower, shave thoroughly, even put on cologne, a gift from Parker last Christmas. A standard, impersonal gift you can buy in any supermarket, but still. I dress slowly, trying not to wrinkle my shirt and suit. The mirror reflects a lean, older man with a straight back and a stern look. Principal Baycroft is still out there somewhere, inside that old body. I call a cab through the app Lilith installed on my phone a year ago. It's more convenient for you, Dad. No need to call dispatch. Actually, she was just tired of ordering a cab for me every time I wanted to go somewhere. The app says the car will arrive in 20 minutes. I still have time. I take the gift for Willow and check the contents one more time. The clock ticks quietly as I open the lid. I wonder if she'll appreciate this gift. Will she understand its significance? Or will she just politely thank me and set it aside like another trinket from her old grandfather? I go out on the porch to wait for a cab. It's a warm, sunny day. Children are playing in the neighboring yard, their laughter spreading through the street. My grandchildren used to play in my garden. Miriam baked cookies for them. I built wooden birdhouses and swings. Now they're too old for that kind of fun, and I'm too old to come up with anything interesting for them. The cab pulls up exactly at the appointed time. The driver, a young guy with headphones, barely nods a greeting. I give him Lilith's address. and we drive off. On the way, I look out the window at the familiar streets of Hastings. The town is changing, new buildings, stores, restaurants, but the core remains the same. Like myself, I guess. We pass St. George's School. It's changed too. A new extension, a modern sports field. I wonder if anyone there remembers Principal Baycroft. I don't think so. New generation of teachers, new pupils. Life moves on, leaving behind those who can't keep up. Finally, we arrive at Lilith's house. It's two-story, brick with a small garden out front. I bought it 17 years ago when she and Derek were first married. Spent almost all my savings then, plus took out a mortgage that I paid off for another 10 years. I wanted my daughter to have her own house so she wouldn't have to deal with rent like Miriam and I did when I was younger. I remember showing them the house before we bought it. Lilith was thrilled, hugging me, thanking me with tears in her eyes. Derek shook my hand and promised that they would turn the house into a cozy family nest. Looking at the house now, I noticed the changes. A new front door, a different color shutter, an attached veranda on the left side. The garden has changed too. Instead of the flower beds that Lilith used to love so much, there is now a lawn and a few ornamental bushes. More modern, less cluttered. I pay the cab driver and get out. My knee reminds me of itself again as I climb the steps to the front door. On the porch are pots of some exotic plants I can't identify. Miriam would know their names. I ring the doorbell and hear muffled music inside. I wait. No one opens. I ring again, longer. Finally the door opens and there's Derek, Lilith's husband, standing in front of me. He's wearing jeans and a t-shirt with a sports team logo on it, a bottle of beer in his hand. "Oh, hi, Eustace," he says with fake joy. "You're early. We're not quite ready yet." "Hello, Derek," I say, trying to sound friendly. "I hope I'm not interrupting your preparations." "No, no, no. Come on in." He steps back, letting me inside. Lilith is in the kitchen, fiddling with the appetizers. Willow's not here yet. She'll be here around 3 with her friends. I enter the house and immediately notice how much the interior has changed since my last visit, which was... when? Christmas? No, I spent Christmas alone. Thanksgiving? No. I think the last time I was here was September for Derek's birthday. The walls have been repainted from beige to gray and there's new furniture. Minimalist, modern. Gone are the bookshelves I helped install years ago. In their place is a flat-screen TV on the wall and some abstract paintings. "Did you renovate?" I ask, looking around. "Yes, in January," Derek answers without going into detail. "Come into the living room and I'll tell Lilith you're here." He disappears into the kitchen and I'm alone in the unfamiliar living room. I sit down on the couch, too low and soft for my back, and look around. Not a single family photo in sight. There used to be a dresser with at least a dozen picture frames. Lilith and Derek's wedding, little Willow, family vacations, Miriam with her granddaughter on her lap. Where are those pictures now? Tucked away in drawers like unwanted relics of the past. On the coffee table lay glossy magazines about interior design and healthy living. Not a single book. And Lilith was such a reader as a child. I remember buying her the complete works of the classics every Christmas. She was obsessed with Dickens and the Bronte sisters. Where are those books now? There are muffled voices coming from the kitchen. Lilith and Derek are arguing about something. I hear my name. "I told you he was coming too soon." Lilith's voice sounds annoyed. "What was I supposed to do? Leave him on the porch?" Derek replies. I pretend not to hear. I'm used to it by now. Finally, Lilith comes out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair is in a sloppy bun, and her face shows signs of fatigue, which she tries to hide with a smile. "Hi, Dad," she says, coming over and kissing me on the cheek. She smells like onions and spices. "How was your trip?" "Fine, thanks," I say. "Sorry I'm early. I was afraid I'd be late." "It's okay," she waves her hand, but I can see that she's not. I'm not done eating yet. Derek, offer Dad something to drink. Derek nods and opens the bar in the corner of the living room. Whiskey? Gin? Wine? He suggests. Just water, please, I reply. Blood pressure pills. He pours me a glass of water and goes back to his beer. Lilith disappears back into the kitchen. Derek and I are left alone. How was work? I ask to fill the silence. It's fine, he answers briefly. Same old stuff. School, kids, training. Are you still at the same school, Kingswood? Yeah, for 12 years now. He takes a sip of his beer. How about you? You in good health? Not bad for my age, I said. My knee bothers me sometimes and my blood pressure spikes, but I'm not complaining. That's good, he nods and looks at his watch. Sorry, I have to help Lilith in the kitchen. And he walks away, leaving me alone. I sit with an untouched glass of water, feeling like a stranger in the house I bought myself. My gaze falls on the gift I'm still holding, Miriam's gold watch for Willow, a family heirloom. I wonder if there's a place for it in this modern, sterile house that doesn't even have a place for family photos. I stand up and decide to look around. There are several photos hanging in the hallway leading to the back of the house. I step closer. They're recent photos: Willow at her graduation, Lilith and Derek at some resort, a family photo with the Eiffel Tower in the background. None of them have me or Miriam in them. I continue down the hallway and stop at the door leading to a small office. The door is ajar and I peek inside. This room hasn't changed. Still the same bookshelves, old chair, desk. And here, finally, I see them, the family photos, including the ones of Miriam and me. They're not thrown away, just moved where guests won't see them, a sort of museum of the past. On one of the shelves, I notice a familiar frame, a photograph taken on Miriam's 60th birthday. We're all standing in the garden of our house. Me, Miriam, Parker, and his family. Lilith with Derek and little Willow. Happy, smiling, a real family. When did everything change? Why? What did I do wrong? Dad? Lilith's voice behind me makes me wince. What are you doing here? Just looking around, I answered, feeling like I'd been caught in the act. Nice pictures. She looks at me with an unreadable expression. I put them here after the renovation, she says after a pause. They didn't fit in with the new decor. I see. I nod, though I don't really understand. How can family photos not fit in a family home? The guests will be here soon, Lilith says, changing the subject. Let's go into the living room. I follow her back into the living room where Derek is setting glasses on the table. The music has gotten louder, some modern tune with no words. Are Parker and his family coming too? I asked, sitting back down on the uncomfortable couch. Yeah, they should be here any minute, Lilith answered, adjusting the flowers in the vase, and a couple of Willow's friends from work. Where is she working now? I wondered. Last I heard, Willow took a job at some marketing company after university. Global Marketing Solutions, Lilith answers proudly. She was recently promoted to junior manager. That's great, I say sincerely. She's always been a smart girl. She plans to buy her own apartment this year, Lilith continues, and I detect a note of superiority in her voice. She puts it off every month. She wants to do it all on her own, without help. I get the hint, unlike her mother who got the house as a gift from her father. Independence is good, I agree neutrally. But family support is important too. Lilith doesn't answer, only pushes her lips together. I've hit a sore spot. Maybe she thinks I'm insulting her about the house, or implying that I should help Willow buy an apartment. Either way, that's not what I meant. The doorbell interrupts the awkward pause. Derek goes to open it, and a minute later Parker enters the living room with his wife, Tamsin, and their children, Orson and Marion. Hello, everyone, Parker announces loudly, looking around the room. He spots me and nods. Oh, hi, Dad. I didn't realize you were already here. Hello, Parker. I stand up to greet my son. Tamsin, kids. Parker gives me a quick hug, a formal hug, no warmth, and immediately retreats to the bar. Tamsin kisses my cheek and whispers, "How are you, Eustace? You look good." A standard phrase said to elderly relatives. Orson and Marion, my grandchildren, confine themselves to nods and quick, "Hi, Grandpa," before diving into their phones. They've grown since I last saw them. Orson is 21 now, attending university. Marion is 19, just entering. I sent them both money for their birthdays, but I didn't even get a thank you message. The living room fills with conversation and laughter, but I feel invisible. Parker is discussing some sports game with Derek. Tamsin and Lilith are talking about renovations, and the kids are on their phones. No one's paying attention to me. I sit and stare at the gift for Willow I'm still holding. Miriam's gold watch, a family heirloom passed down through the generations. A symbol of continuity, of the bond of time. I wonder what Miriam would say if she saw what our family has become since she left. How would she deal with this alienation, this gulf between me and the children? Miriam was always the link. She remembered birthdays, organized family dinners, called the kids just to see how they were doing. I, on the other hand, was a strict father, more focused on providing for the family, on building the material base. Maybe that was my fault. Maybe I should have been more vocal about my feelings, more open, less demanding. But wasn't I doing the best I could? Didn't I work myself to exhaustion to provide them with education, housing, stability? Didn't I deny myself a lot of things so they could have everything they needed? And the result is that I'm sitting in the corner of the living room of the house I bought, feeling like a stranger in the midst of my own family. The doorbell rings again, interrupting my thoughts. This time it's Willow and her friends. I hear her voice in the hallway, a resounding laugh. Everyone perks up, going to greet the birthday girl. I remain seated, clutching the watch box tighter in my hands. Now I will see my granddaughter who once sat on my lap and asked me to tell her a story. I wonder if she remembers that. Or for her, I am now just an old man who is invited to family holidays out of a sense of duty. I prepare for the meeting and hope that today, if only for a short time, I'll feel part of the family again, not just a useless old man living out his days alone. Willow enters the living room, surrounded by a noisy group of friends. At once it gets louder, brighter, tighter. My granddaughter has changed since I last saw her. Shorter hair, some unusual jewelry in her ears, a more confident gait. She's wearing a tight black dress and high-heeled shoes. She looks mature, successful. Everyone rushes to congratulate her, hugging her, kissing her. I stay seated, waiting for my turn. After a few minutes of commotion, Lilith finally remembers me and brings her daughter over. "Willow, say hello to Grandpa." Willow turns to me, a polite smile on her face. "Hi, Grandpa," she says, leaning over to kiss my cheek. She smells of floral perfume and a slight whiff of wine. "Glad you could make it." "Happy birthday, darling," I reply, trying to keep my voice from shaking with excitement. 24 is a wonderful age. "Thank you." She straightens up, ready to step away. "I have a present for you," I say quickly, holding out the box. "Oh, you shouldn't have bothered." She accepts the gift with a polite smile. "Open it now, please," I ask. "I want to see your reaction." Willow casts a quick glance at her mother, then back at me. Something resembling irritation flashes in her eyes, but she starts to open the box anyway. "It was your grandmother's watch," I say as she unwraps the velvet cloth. "Her grandmother gave it to her, and now it's yours." Willow pulls out a gold watch on a chain. It glistens in the light of the lamps, antique gold with the slight patina of time. "Open it," I offer. There's an engraving inside. She obediently opens the lid and reads, "Time is the most precious gift." "That's very nice," she says after a pause. "Thank you, Grandpa. But I can see that the gift didn't make an impression." She looks at the watch with polite interest, without a spark of recognition of its value. To her, it's just an old thing, not a family heirloom, not a link to the past, not part of her roots. Your grandmother treasured them, I add, hoping to explain the significance of the gift. She wore them only on special occasions. I'll keep them safe, Willow says, closing the box and putting it in her purse. Excuse me, Grandpa, I need to say hello to the other guests. And she walks away, leaving me feeling like I just gave away a piece of my heart and it was just put in a box and forgotten. The party continues around me. Lilith is bringing out appetizers. Derek is pouring drinks. Parker is loudly telling some story. Everyone is laughing. I sit in my corner, like a piece of furniture that's too hard to rearrange, but which interferes with the overall composition of the room. I try to join the conversation when Parker starts discussing the real estate market, a topic I understand something about, given my investments. In fact, the current situation reminds me of the early 2000s, I say when there's a pause in the conversation. Back then, too, there was a price spike before the correction. Parker gives me a look of surprise that I know anything about this subject. It's different now, Dad, he replies condescendingly. The market is much more regulated, other economic factors. And he continues his story with his back defiantly turned to me, as if to say, your time has passed, old man. I'm the expert now. I feel the color of shame flood my face. I wasn't just saying that. I've actually lived through several real estate market cycles, seen it all happen again. But Parker didn't even bother to listen to the rest of my thought. I shut up and sip water from my glass. My throat is suddenly dry. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Maybe I should have stayed home and sent the gift by courier claiming I wasn't feeling well. Lilith brings a large cake with lit candles into the room. Everyone gathers around the table singing, "Happy Birthday." I sing too, but my voice is drowned out in the chorus. Willow makes a wish and blows out the candles. Everyone applauds. The cake cutting begins. Lilith passes out plates and I notice that I'm the last to get my turn. I get the smallest piece of cake. Maybe it's an accident, maybe. The cake is delicious, I say, turning to Lilith. Did you bake it yourself? No, I ordered it from Sweet Dreams, she said, not even looking in my direction. Your mom always baked her own cakes, I say quietly. She had a special recipe for chocolate cake. Times have changed, Dad, Lilith cuts in. Everyone has a lot of work to do now and no one stays at home baking cakes. Her tone makes it clear that comparisons to Miriam are unwelcome. It's as if I'm scolding her for not being as good a mother and hostess as my wife was. That's not what I meant, I try to explain. I just remembered. But Lilith has already walked away before I've finished. I'm left alone again with my little piece of cake and memories that nobody cares about. The atmosphere in the room becomes stuffy. Too many people, too loud conversations, too bright lights. My head is starting to hurt. I get up and go to the kitchen to get more water and a blood pressure pill. In the kitchen, Tamsin, Parker's wife, is loading the dishwasher. She is the only one who has always treated me with respect, albeit a little aloof. Everything okay, Eustace? She asks, noticing that I've taken out my pills. Yes, just a little headache, I reply. It's too noisy for me. Do you want some water? Don't worry, I'll get it myself, I say, pulling a glass out of my locker. How's Orson? I heard he changed his major at the university. Yeah, from economics to computer science, she nods. He says it's more promising. That makes sense, I agree. Technology is the future. He's already been offered an internship for the summer, she says with pride in her voice. In a good company, with the possibility of employment after graduation. That's wonderful. I am sincerely happy for my grandson. He has always been a smart boy. I remember when he took my wall clock apart and put it back together as a child. Tamsin smiles, and for a moment there is something like real contact between us. I saw the gift you brought for Willow, she says, lowering her voice. It's very touching, Eustace. It's a shame that young people don't always appreciate things like that. Yes, times are changing, I sigh. But I hope that someday she will realize the value of this watch. She will, Tamsin said, squeezing my hand. Just give her time. Time. The irony is that I'm running out of time. I return to the living room with a new glass of water. The guests are in groups, all engrossed in conversation. No one notices me. No one asks where I've been. I sit down again in my corner and watch the festivities as if through a glass. Orson and Marion are sitting on the couch staring at their phones. I approach them, trying to make contact. "How's the university?" I ask, sitting down next to them. "It's fine," Orson answers, not even looking up from the screen. "And you, Marion, have you decided on a major yet?" "Not yet." She gives me a quick glance and goes back to her phone. "In my day," I begin, and I see my grandchildren looking back at me with barely concealed chuckles. The university was a place for discussion, for the exchange of ideas. "Grandpa, it's different now," Marion interrupts. "We have the internet, you know. We can discuss ideas with people from all over the world, not just those who are physically near us." Of course, technology opens up new possibilities, I agree. But face-to-face communication has its value. "If you say so," Orson clearly loses interest in the conversation. "Look, we're texting with friends. No offense, okay?" And they go back to their phones. I stay sitting next to them, but it's like there's a generational gap between us. Time passes. The atmosphere becomes more and more casual. Someone opens the wine. The conversations get louder. The laughter gets louder. I feel increasingly out of place, like a formal jacket at a beach party. I notice a beautiful vase with no flowers on the table in the center of the room. I see it as an opportunity to do something useful. "Lilith," I turn to my daughter as she walks by, "do you have any flowers in your garden? I could cut some for a vase." She looks at me in surprise. "Why? We weren't planning a flower arrangement." "I just thought it would be pretty," I shrug. "For Miriam's birthday, we always put flowers on the table." Lilith hesitates, then waves her hand. "There are some bushes with flowers in the garden if you want them. The garden shears are in the shed by the fence." "Thank you," I nod, glad to be able to escape the stuffy tension of the house for a while. I go out the back door into the garden. It's quiet, cool, and smells of earth and greenery. Immediately it becomes easier to breathe. I follow the path to a small shed and find a pair of garden shears. There are some bushes with small white flowers in the garden, not the roses Miriam loves so much, but they're pretty too. I begin to carefully cut the flowers, trying to pick out the prettiest ones. Working with plants is soothing. I remember how Miriam and I used to spend hours in our garden, planning, planting, tending. It was our shared hobby after I retired. She knew the names of all the plants. I was responsible for the hard physical work. A good tandem. Engrossed in memories and work, I don't notice Parker, Derek, and a few guests coming out onto the terrace. They're standing around the barbecue, talking, laughing. I'm close enough to hear their conversation, but they apparently don't notice me behind the bushes. "Your dad's still a tough old man," one of Derek's friends says, nodding toward the house. "How old is he?" 78, Parker says. "Sometimes he acts like he's 108, though." Everyone laughs. "Does he live alone?" asks the same man. "Yeah, in the same big house we grew up in." Parker takes a sip of beer. He refuses to move, even though I offered him a smaller apartment or a nursing home. "Nursing home?" Somebody's interrupting. "Can't he take care of himself?" "He can, of course," Parker shrugs. "But it would be easier for everyone. We wouldn't have to keep checking to see if he's okay, if he's had a fall, if he's taken his meds." "When was the last time you checked on him?" Derek asks with a chuckle. "I don't remember." Parker waves him off. "A month ago? 2? He doesn't like it when we show up unannounced. No, he doesn't. I'm always happy to see the kids and grandkids. It's just that they hardly ever come. What does he do all day? Someone asks. I have no idea. Parker shrugs again. Watching TV? Reading newspapers? Complaining about politicians? The usual old man stuff. A new burst of laughter. I grip the scissors so tight my knuckles turn white. Hey, isn't that your father in the bushes? One of the guests suddenly asks, pointing in my direction. Everyone turns and sees me. I straighten up, holding a bouquet of freshly cut flowers and a pair of scissors. Dad? Parker looks surprised and confused. What are you doing in there? Cutting flowers for the table, I answer calmly, though I'm seething inside. Lilith said it was okay. They look at me, an older man in a suit standing among the bushes with garden shears and flowers, and I see the smiles appear on their faces that they are trying to hide. You look like a gardener, Derek suddenly blurts out and starts laughing. The others pick up the laughter. Parker tries to keep a serious expression on his face, but he can't stand it either and joins in the fun. Hey, Dad, we can hire you to take care of our garden, he jokes through his laughter. You've clearly found a new calling. I stand frozen in place with the flowers in my hands and feel the laughter hit my dignity with scathing blows. Seriously, Eustace, said Derek, wiping away tears of laughter, all you need is a hat and rubber boots. A real English gardener from an aristocratic estate. You're a far cry from the headmaster, adds one of the guests. That's the last straw. I slowly lower the scissors and flowers to the nearest garden bench. I straighten up, squaring my shoulders as I always do when I enter a classroom or address the school. I apologize, I say in a steady voice. I have to go. Come on, Dad, we're just kidding. Parker takes a step in my direction. No offense. But I'm already walking toward the back gate of the garden, the one that leads to the street. I don't want to go back inside, don't want to go through rooms full of people who just laughed at me. Where are you going? Parker's yelling after me. Dad! I don't stop. I don't turn around. I open the gate and walk out into the street. I walk as fast as my bad knee will allow. At the corner, I look around. No one followed me, no one tried to stop me. They probably thought I'd just gone for a walk to cool off. Or more likely, they'd already forgotten about me, going back to their talking and laughing. I pull out my phone and call a cab. Thankfully, the app still works. The car promises to arrive in 7 minutes. I sit down on a bench at the bus stop and wait, feeling a heavy, deafening ache building up inside. You look like a gardener. Those words echo in my head. I've been a respected man all my life, a teacher, a school principal, the head of a family. And now I'm an object of ridicule, an old man who looks ridiculous trying to do something useful. My phone vibrates. A message from Lilith. Daddy, where are you? Willow will be cutting the second cake soon. I don't answer it. Let them think I didn't hear the call or don't know how to use the phone. Another old man quirk to laugh at. The cab pulls up, I get in the back seat and give my address. The driver, a young guy with an earpiece in his ear, doesn't even turn around, just nods and drives off. I look out the window at the houses and trees floating by. Some of the windows have lights on, silhouettes of people, families gathered together. I wonder if there are lonely old men like me among them, as unwanted, forgotten, ridiculed by their own children. The phone vibrates again. This time it's from Parker. I reject it. Then another one from Lilith. I'm rejecting that too. Let them worry for a while. Although they'll probably just shrug their shoulders and go on having fun. My absence will hardly spoil the festivities. The cab pulls up in front of my house. I pay, get out. The house greets me with dark windows and silence. I open the door, go inside without turning on the light. In the dark, I find my way to the chair in the living room and sit down. This is it. Willow's birthday, a family celebration, Miriam's gold watch, which will now likely gather dust in a dresser drawer or, worse, end up in a thrift store, and me, who was ridiculed for trying to be helpful. "You look like a gardener," as if there's any shame in that, as if being a gardener is less worthy of respect than any other job. I sit in the dark, listening to the ticking of the clocks. They all tell different times, but it doesn't matter anymore. For me, it's as if time stopped the moment I heard my own children laughing behind me. The phone vibrates for the third time. A message from Tamsin. "Eustace, everyone is worried. Are you okay? Please answer." At least someone noticed my absence. I dial a short reply. "I'm home. I'm fine. Apologize to Willow for me." A second and the reply comes. "What happened? Why did you leave?" What am I supposed to say? That I couldn't take the ridicule? That I felt humiliated and unwanted? That I finally realized how little I mean to my family? "Not feeling well," I wrote back. "Didn't want to ruin the party. I'm fine." "Should I call you later?" Tamsin asks. "No need. I'm going to bed early. Say hi to everyone." That's the end of the correspondence. I put my phone away and close my eyes. The picture comes back to my mind, me among the bushes with flowers and scissors, laughing faces around me, scornful looks. "You look like a gardener." Something fractures inside, something I was still trying to hold on to. The hope that my family still respects me, appreciates me, loves me. Now I see the truth. To them I'm just a burden, an old man living out his days, an object of ridicule. In the darkness of the room, I make a decision. It's time to make a change. It's time to show them that Director Baycroft isn't completely out of his mind and can teach them one last lesson. Tomorrow I'll call my old friend, lawyer Frank Witters. We have some estate and probate matters to discuss. I wake up with the first rays of sunlight coming through the loose curtains. I'd spent the night in the chair, unable to find the strength to go up to the bedroom. My body was stiff, my knee aching more than usual, but my mind was surprisingly clear. Yesterday evening was before his eyes in every detail. The party, the gold watch in Willow's purse, Parker's dismissive glances, Derek's laughter. "You look like a gardener." Those words burned something inside me, leaving behind not pain, but a strange desolation that slowly fills with cold determination. I rise from my chair, wrinkling my aching joints, and walk to the kitchen. I make tea, making toast with the usual motions. A lonely old man's breakfast. But today I don't feel lonely or pathetic. Today I feel like Principal Baycroft, a man who has led the school for 20 years and made difficult decisions. The phone on my desk shows 3 missed calls from Lilith and 2 from Parker. Not a single message. They've probably figured I've taken offense as usual and will cool off soon. That I could call in a week, check on my health, and everything would be back to normal. Poor old Dad, so touchy, so predictable. Not this time. After breakfast, I go into the study and pull out a shabby notebook from my desk drawer. In it are the phone numbers of people I kept in touch with after I retired. Many of them are no longer alive. Many have changed numbers. But Frank Witters, my longtime acquaintance and the lawyer who handled the paperwork for my children's homes, should be there. I dial the number and listen to the long beeps. My heart beats faster than usual. Finally, a familiar voice. Frank Witters speaking. "Frank, it's Eustace Baycroft," I said, trying to sound confident. "Eustace?" Surprise in my voice. "It's been a long time. How are you, old boy?" "Not bad, considering the circumstances," I reply. "Frank, I need your professional help. It's about real estate and probate." "Of course. I'm always happy to help." I hear a note of concern in his voice. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing urgent," I reassure him. "I just want to make some changes. When can we meet?" "Let me think about it." I hear the rustling of the pages of the day planner. "How about tomorrow, 11 o'clock in the morning? I have a window between meetings." "Perfect," I agree. "Is your office still there?" "Yes, same address on the high street." "Eustace, are you sure everything's all right?" Everything's perfectly all right, Frank, I reply with a new firmness in my voice. It's just time to get things in order. We say goodbye, and I hang up. The first step has been taken. Now I have to prepare for the meeting, gather all the necessary documents. I spend the rest of the day sorting through papers in my office. I pull out real estate files, account statements, insurance policies, the will Miriam made when she was still alive. I arrange them all neatly on the desk, sorting them, making notes. I have 7 properties. Miriam and I have the house I live in now, Parker and Tamsin's house, which I bought for them as a wedding present 25 years ago, Lilith and Derek's house that I bought 17 years ago, and 4 other smaller houses that I rent out that provide me with a steady income. All the paperwork is in order. Each property has a certificate of title in my name, all taxes paid, all insurance valid. The children's homes are also my property. Then, many years ago, I decided not to reissue them to the children at once, but first to see how they would cope with the upkeep. I planned to pass them on through my will. That decision seems remarkably far-sighted to me now. In the evening, the phone rings again. Parker this time. I don't answer it. Then Lilith. I ignore either. Let them get used to the idea that old Dad won't always be available when called. The night passes restlessly. I toss and turn in bed, thinking about my upcoming meeting with Frank and the kids' reactions. I have no doubt they will be furious, that they'll accuse me of being cruel, of being vindictive, maybe even of senile dementia. But I've already made my decision, and I'm prepared for the consequences. In the morning, I'm going to be extra careful. My best suit, the same one I wore to Willow's birthday party, seems like a symbol of my humiliation now. I choose another, the gray pinstripe one I'd worn to the school's Board of Trustees meetings, principal's suit. I hail a cab and drive to Frank's office, located in an old building on the high street. On the way, I look out the window at the familiar streets of Hastings and think about how much my life has changed in the last 3 years. Miriam is gone. The children are estranged. The grandchildren have grown up and forgotten my grandfather's existence. All that's left are memories and real estate. Well, at least I can still do something with the real estate. Frank Witter's office hadn't changed since the last time I'd been here 5 years ago, when Miriam and I had updated the will. The same dark wood paneling on the walls, the same leather chairs, the same rows of legal volumes on the shelves. Frank himself hadn't changed much either. Still the same full, red-faced man with a neat gray beard. Just a few more wrinkles. Eustace. He rises from the table to shake my hand. Good to see you. How's Miriam? Miriam died 3 years ago, Frank, I answer, sitting down in the chair across from him. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. He looks genuinely saddened. My condolences. Helen and I always admired your couple. Thank you. I nod. How's Helen? Good. Still working at the library, though she's long overdue for retirement, he said, smiling. Can't part with her books. We exchange a few more sentences about health, the weather, mutual acquaintances. Then Frank gets down to business. So, Eustace, you mentioned real estate and a will. What exactly would you like to discuss? I take a folder of documents out of my briefcase and put it on the table. I want to sell 2 houses, I say bluntly. The one where my son Parker and his family live, and the one where my daughter Lilith and her family live. Frank raises his eyebrows in surprise. They're moving out, finding another place to live. No, I shake my head. They don't know about my decision. Frank leans back in his chair, studying me with his gaze. Eustace, it's not for me to tell you, but this is an unusual move. These houses have been their family nests for years. I own the houses, I remind him. I didn't ask them for rent, didn't demand anything in return, just respect, and I didn't even get that. Did something happen between you two? Frank asks cautiously. I don't want to go into the details of last night's humiliation, so I answer briefly. Let's just say we had a disagreement about family values. Frank nods, not insisting on the details. He's always been a tactful man. Legally, you have every right to sell these houses, he says. They're registered in your name. There are no encumbrances. But you realize that your children will be upset? I do, I agree. And I'm ready for that. Good, he makes a note in his notebook. What other changes would you like to make? I want to rewrite my will, I continue. I used to plan to leave the house to the kids. Now I'm thinking differently. We spend the next hour discussing the details of the new will. I decide to leave my main house and 2 of the 4 rented houses to the local hospice where Miriam spent her last weeks, another house to St. George's School to establish a scholarship in my name, and only one, the smallest house, to the children in equal shares. Are you sure? Frank asks, writing down my wishes. It's a pretty radical change. I'm absolutely sure, I nod. When can we start the sale process? If you have all the paperwork today, he says. But first you'll have to notify the tenants, your children, that is, of your decision. The law requires advance notice. I understand, I say. Get the paperwork ready and I'll sign it. Frank makes a few calls, gives instructions to his secretary. Half an hour later, we have the notices of sale for Parker and Lilith on our desk. Standard forms, dry legal language, no emotion. Exactly what we need. By law, they'll have 30 days to vacate the premises or negotiate a lease with the new owner, Frank explained. But I'd recommend giving them more time. It's your kids we're talking about. 60 days, I decide after a pause. That should be enough. Frank nods and amends the documents. I sign them one by one, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders with each signature. What's next? I ask when all the papers are signed. We'll send the notices by registered mail, Frank replies. At the same time, we'll start looking for buyers. Given the location of the houses and the state of the market, I think we'll find them pretty quickly. Good, I nod. One more thing, Frank. If my children contact you directly, tell them that you're acting on my instructions and that they have to deal with me. Of course, he looks at me with slight concern. Eustace, are you sure you've thought this through? This is a big step. Believe me, Frank, I've been thinking about it all night, I reply. And all the way here, and all 3 years since Miriam died. It's just that something finally snapped yesterday. He doesn't ask what it was. He just nods and shakes my hand. Then I'll contact you as soon as I hear from you, and we'll have the will drawn up within the week. I leave Frank's office with a sense of accomplishment, not to the kids, to myself. For the first time in a long time, I made a decision not as a father thinking of the children's welfare, but as a man thinking of his own dignity. I return home, and the first thing I do is turn off my home phone. I put my cell phone on mute. I don't want to hear the kids calling when they get notifications. I don't want to explain, make excuses, hear accusations. Everything I want to say is in these legal documents. The next 3 days pass in a strange calm. I do things I've been putting off for a long time. I sort through the books in the study, try to tidy up the garden, even start reading the new detective novel I bought when Miriam was alive. I don't check my phone. I don't turn on my computer. Total information isolation. On the 4th day, the doorbell rings. It's insistent, long. I go to the window and see Parker's car parked outside the house. He's standing on the porch, pressing the bell button again and again. His face is contorted with anger. I move away from the window and sit down in the chair. The ringing continues for another 5 minutes. Then I hear a knock on the window. Parker's going around the house, trying to look inside. Finally, the sounds fade. I peek out cautiously. The car is gone. He's gone. That same evening, another visit. Lilith this time. She doesn't call, but knocks on the door, shouting my name. Daddy, I know you're home. Open up right now. Her voice breaks into a scream. I sit still until she leaves. The next morning, I turn on my cell phone and see 37 missed calls and 23 messages. From Parker, from Lilith, even from Tamsin and Derek. I start reading the messages, from the earliest to the latest. Parker: Dad, what's going on? We got some weird letter from a lawyer. Call me back right away. Lilith: Dad, is there some kind of mistake? Why did we get a notice that the house is for sale? Call me. Parker: I called Frank Witters. He said he was acting on your instructions. Is that true? Are you serious about selling our house? Lilith: Dad, if you're offended about Willow's birthday, let's talk. This is some kind of misunderstanding. The messages get more desperate, then angry, then threatening. Parker: If you don't answer, I'm calling the police, in case something happened to you. Lilith: You can't do this to us. We have a family, children. Where are we going to live? Parker: I consulted another lawyer. We can challenge your decision if we can prove you're incapacitated. Lilith: Mom would never approve of such an act. You're betraying her memory. The last messages are from this morning already. Parker: Dad, let's talk like adults. I'll be there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Please open the door. Lilith: We're all coming to your place at 2 o'clock. We need to discuss this. I look at the clock. It's almost 2. That means the whole family will be here soon, demanding an explanation. Well, I'm ready. During these days of silence and solitude, I've made up my mind. At exactly 2 o'clock, 2 cars, Parker's and Lilith's, appear in the driveway. Everyone gets out. Parker, Tamsin, Lilith, Derek, even Willow. Only Orson and Marion aren't there, apparently deciding that this is adult conversation. They go up on the porch and a new round of ringing and knocking on the door begins. This time I decide to open it. I put on my jacket, adjust my tie, square my shoulders. Principal Baycroft is ready for an unpleasant conversation. I open the door and see a furious Parker standing in front of me, ready to keep pounding his fist, followed by the rest of the family with expressions ranging from anger to fear on their faces. Finally, Parker blurts out, "We were thinking of calling the police." "That wasn't necessary," I reply calmly. "I'm perfectly fine." "Then what's this all about?" He's waving a letter from Frank. "Why did you decide to sell our houses?" "Come in," I say, stepping aside. "If you want to talk, let's do it in a civilized manner." They walk into the living room, seated Parker and Lilith on the couch, their spouses in the chairs, Willow by the window. I remain standing, leaning on the cane I'd picked up specifically for this conversation, not because I need it, but because it gives me a certain authority. "So, I'm listening," I say, looking at them in turn. "Are you listening?" Parker is almost shouting. "We're the ones who should be listening. What's going on, Dad? Why did you decide to sell our houses?" "Because they're mine," I answer simply. "And I decided it was time to sell them." "But we live there," Lilith enters. "They're our family homes. Willow grew up in that house." "Technically, they're my houses you live in," I correct her. "For free, I might add. All these years." "You gave them to us." Parker jumps up off the couch. "They were gifts. I let you live in them," I shake my head. "But I never transferred ownership. That's different, Parker. You, as a real estate appraiser, should understand that." This is despicable," Lilith screams. "You always said these houses would be ours. In your will," I clarify, "which I have the right to change, and I changed it." There is silence. They look at me as if they're seeing me for the first time. Maybe they are. Maybe it's the first time they see not just an old dad, but a man capable of making tough decisions. "Why?" Tamsin asks quietly. "What did we do?" "It's not what you did," I answer, turning my gaze to her. "It's what you didn't do. You didn't show respect, didn't appreciate what you have, what you thought you owed. Is this about Willow's birthday?" Derek shakes his head. "Because of that stupid joke about the gardener? Really, Eustace?" "No, not because of the joke," I answer calmly. "Because of the laughter that followed it. because of the contempt in your eyes, because no one even noticed when I left. We did notice, Lilith protests. We called you. An hour later, I remind her, when they found I wasn't sitting in my corner. Dad, you can't punish us for one stupid joke. Parker spreads his hands. It's not fair. It would have been fair to charge you rent all these years, I reply. But I didn't. I thought family relationships were more important than money. Turns out I was wrong. Grandpa, Willow said, who had been silent at the window all this time, I wanted to thank you for the watch. It's beautiful. Her voice sounds insincere. She's clearly trying to soften me up at her parents' instigation. It's too late and too obvious. You're welcome, I reply dryly. I hope you wear them with more dignity than your family shows. You can't do this to us, Parker explodes again. We are your children. I can, I say firmly, and I'm doing it. The paperwork's in. The process is underway. You have 60 days to find a new place to live. 60 days? Lilith looks like she's been punched. That's impossible. Where are we going to find the money for a new house in that amount of time? You're adults, working people, I shrug. You'll figure something out. You can rent an apartment for starters. And what about your will? Parker asks, clearly trying to come at it from the other side. Did you change it too? Yes, I answer honestly. Most of my property will go to the hospice where your mother was treated and St. George's School. I leave you one small house which you can sell and divide the money. You can't disinherit us. Parker clenches his fists. It's against the law. Quite legal, I object. I consulted a lawyer. In England, there is no compulsory share of inheritance for children as in some other countries. I can bequeath my property to anyone I want. They look at me with disbelief, shock, rage. None of them expected this turn of events. They were used to seeing me as a soft, compliant father who always indulged their desires, always put their interests before his own. Now they see a different man. If that's all you wanted to discuss, I said, taking a step toward the door, I'd ask you to leave. I have a lot to do today. Things to do? Derek snorts. What business could there possibly be for... He doesn't finish the sentence, but everyone realizes what he meant to say. An old man like you. It's that attitude that led to today's situation. I have a meeting with the director of the hospice, I answer coldly. We're going over the details of the real estate transfer, then with a lawyer about the will, then with the realtor who will be selling your homes. So, as you can see, I'm very busy. You're going to regret this. Parker stands up, looking at me with open hostility. We'll prove that you're incompetent, that you don't know what you're doing. You can try, I shrug. But keep in mind that Frank Witters, my lawyer, has already prepared documents proving my legal capacity, medical reports, psychiatric evaluation, everything you need. So don't waste your time and money. It's been 3 months since the day I made the decision to change my life. 3 months filled with legal procedures, meetings with realtors, bankers, notaries. 3 months that turned everything I had been used to for years upside down. Today I sit on the terrace of my new house in Winchelsea, a small coastal village 20 kilometers from Hastings. The sea murmurs close by. The salty wind ruffles the branches of the apple trees in the small orchard. My new house is much smaller than before. Just 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a study. But there are no empty rooms that remind me of children and grandchildren gone. No heavy curtains that Miriam had chosen. No old clocks counting down the hours in a different rhythm. On the desk in front of me is a folder with the paperwork to finalize the sale of the Parker and Lilith homes. It's done. The money's been deposited into my account. Frank Witters did an excellent job despite my children's attempts to obstruct the transaction. They tried. Oh, they tried. First the threats, to sue, to prove I was incompetent, to contest the sale. Then pleas, endless phone calls, letters of apology, even a bouquet of flowers from Lilith with a card that said, "We're sorry, Dad." Then the threats again, more specific, involving lawyers, trying to find loopholes in the law. Nothing worked. Frank had everything covered. I had a medical exam that confirmed my full legal capacity. I submitted all the necessary documents proving my sole ownership of the houses. I met the 60-day deadline for evicting the tenants, even extending it for another 2 weeks at Tamsin's request. And the result is 2 sold houses, a good sum in my bank account, and a new life in a quiet coastal village where no one knows me as Old Mr. Baycroft or former headmaster. Here I am, simply Eustace, a new resident with an interesting London accent and a habit of getting up early for walks along the coast. My cottage stands on the edge of the village, a 5-minute walk from the sea. It is small but sturdy, with a tiled roof and whitewashed walls. The previous owners, an elderly couple who moved to Australia with their children, left the garden in good condition. There are apple trees, pears, plums, and many flowers. Tending them has suddenly become my new hobby. "You look like a gardener." Those words, thrown by Derek in mockery, now took on a new meaning. I have indeed become a gardener. Every morning I worked in the garden, pruning bushes, weeding beds, watering flowers. My hands, used to the pen of the school principal, are now covered with calluses from gardening tools. And you know what? I like it. I sip tea from a mug and look at the bay, glistening in the morning sun, fishing boats returning from a night of fishing, seagulls circling above them, hoping for a meal. A quiet, measured life I never dreamed of in Hastings. Of course, there were difficult moments. The first weeks in my new home, I would wake up in the middle of the night, not realizing where I was, looking for familiar objects in unfamiliar rooms, listening to the sounds of the new house, so different from the creaks and rustles of the old one. There were days when I doubted my decision, when the longing for a familiar life became almost unbearable, when I remembered the faces of the children the day I announced the house sale to them. Shock, disbelief, despair. At times like that, I pulled out a box of Miriam's pictures, the only thing I had taken from my old belongings, and spoke to her as if she could hear me. "You're doing the right thing, Eustace," I'd say, imagining her response. "You can't let anyone, even your own children, treat you without respect." Gradually, the doubts receded. I began to settle into Winchelsea, getting to know my neighbors, exploring the neighborhood. It turned out that there were quite a few people like me, older people who had started a new life away from the big cities and family dramas. My first acquaintance was Eleanor Pruitt, a 72-year-old widow who lived next door. She knocked on my door on the 3rd day after I moved in, brought me a homemade cake, and invited me to tea. Since then, we have met often, walking along the shore, discussing books, sometimes having dinner together. No romantic overtones, just friendly companionship between 2 lonely people. Through Eleanor, I've gotten to know the other villagers. Most of them are retirees like us, with similar stories behind them. Geoffrey Hobbs, a former banker who fled an overbearing daughter in London. Margaret Thatcher, the namesake of the former Prime Minister, as she always clarifies, a once famous artist who broke up with her family over her sister's inheritance. William and Dorothy Hammond, a married couple whose children traveled the world, forgetting their parents. All of them, like me, have found in Winchelsea a new beginning, a new family, so to speak. The amazing thing is that a month after I moved in, I joined the local gardening club. Ironically, the man who was ridiculed for looking like a gardener has now truly become one. We meet every Wednesday at the community center, exchange seedlings, discuss pest control methods, and plan joint landscaping projects for the village. My roses, yes, I've started growing roses again, like Miriam, received high praise at the last club meeting. Dorothy Hammond even asked for cuttings for her garden. "You clearly have talent, Eustace," she said. "It's like you've been doing this all your life." If only she knew how far I'd been from gardening most of my life. A school principal, a strict father, a careful homeowner, anything but a man digging in the ground. But now I enjoy this simple, physical labor. From the results that can be seen immediately, a blossoming bush, ripe apples, a well-tended lawn. I try not to think about the children, but the news gets to me. Tamsin's niece, Ashley, lives in Winchelsea, whom we ran into by chance at the local bakery. She recognized me from the photos and spoke first. There were no accusations or recriminations, just polite conversation about the weather, the village, my new home. And then, as if by the way, she mentioned Parker and Tamsin. "They're renting an apartment in Hastings now," she said. "Not as big as their old house. 3 rooms on the 5th floor, no elevator. Parker has a hard time getting up after a day's work." I nodded, showing no emotion. I didn't ask about Lilith and her family, but Ashley continued on her own. "Lilith and Derek have moved to Eastbourne. It's cheaper there, but Derek has to commute almost an hour to work. Willow's staying in Hastings, renting a room with a friend." Another nod on my part. No regret, no gloating, just acceptance of the information. "They're still hoping you'll change your mind," Ashley added lastly. "Especially Tamsin. She says you've always been a judicious man." "Judgment doesn't exclude principle," I replied and changed the subject. After this meeting, I pondered for some time the fate of the children. Yes, they had to move out of comfortable homes into less comfortable housing. Yes, it created certain difficulties. But are these the real problems? Don't millions of people live in these conditions, or much worse, all their lives? My kids are healthy, they have jobs, a roof over their heads, support for each other. They'll get by. And if they can't, well, that will be their choice and their responsibility, not mine. Lawyers already contacted me about Parker's new attempt to contest the sale. Something about verbal promise and moral obligation. Frank assures me it's unenforceable, but will still require my presence at the hearing next month. I'll go. I'll meet the kids face to face in the courtroom. I'll listen to their arguments, their accusations, their pleas, and I will remain steadfast. Not out of revenge, out of principle, out of the self-respect I've ignored for so long. I finish my tea and rise from my chair. It's time to do the garden before it gets too hot. Today, I plan to trim the hedge and plant new clematis along the south wall of the house. Margaret Thatcher has promised to come by this afternoon to show her new watercolors. And in the evening, a gardening club meeting where I'll be sharing my experience of growing roses in a coastal climate. A busy day, a busy life, without a shadow of old resentments and disappointments. I grab my garden shears and smile, remembering Derek's taunt. "You look like a gardener." Yes, I do look like a gardener now, and proud of it. When the hedges are done, I switch to clematis. I dig holes, add compost, carefully place the roots and cover with soil. Physical work brings a satisfaction that I did not experience sitting at the director's desk. Here, in the garden, the results are visible at once. Here is a hole, here is a plant, here is watered, well-groomed soil around. And in a few months, flowers that will please the eye. At school, it was different. You work with children, you put knowledge, values, principles into them, and you never know for sure if it will bear fruit. My own children are a prime example of that. Everything I tried to instill in them, respect for elders, gratitude for help, the ability to appreciate what you have, did not take root, or it did, but it withered without proper care after Miriam's death. Finished with the planting, I take the tools to the shed and return to the house. I shower, change into clean clothes and prepare a light lunch, a salad of fresh vegetables from the local farm and a slice of homemade bread that Dorothy brought last night. I eat lunch on the terrace, enjoying the view of the bay and the sound of the surf. I have never had a view like this in Hastings. A big house in a respectable neighborhood, yes, but without that feeling of spaciousness, of freedom, of being one with nature. After lunch, Margaret comes in with a folder of watercolors. We sit in the living room, drink tea, and look at her works: seascapes, views of the village, portraits of local residents. Among them, I am surprised to find my own portrait, me in the garden, among the roses, with a pensive expression on my face. "When did you have time to draw me?" I ask, looking at the watercolor. "Last week when I went to get cuttings," Margaret replies with a smile. "You were so engrossed in your roses that you didn't even notice I'd made a few sketches. Then I finished them at home." "That's very accurate," I said, staring at my image. "Do I really look like that?" "Yes," she nods. "Peaceful, satisfied with life. Not like when you first arrived." "What was I like then?" "Tense, wary, like I was expecting a blow at any moment." She paused. "Forgive me for being blunt, but you looked like you were running away from something heavy." "I was," I admit, "but it's different now." "I'm glad," Margaret smiles. "The portrait is yours if you want it. A housewarming gift, albeit a belated one." I accept the watercolor with gratitude. I won't hang it on the wall. It's too narcissistic. But I'll put it on a shelf in my office. A reminder of how I've changed over the months. In the evening, I go to a gardening club meeting. 8 people, including me, gather in a small community center. Tea, cookies, plant talk, and future plans. Today, we discuss participating in the county's annual flower show. I'm being persuaded to exhibit my roses. "You really have talent, Mr. Baycroft," says the club's chairman, Mr. Finch, a former biologist. "Such healthy bushes in such a short space of time, it's impressive." "Just luck with the soil," I reply modestly. "And the weather." "Don't be modest," he pats me on the shoulder. "We can all see how much work you put into your garden. A real professional. A real professional." Those words sound especially nice after that humiliation at Willow's birthday party. Back then, I was ridiculed for looking like a gardener, a mere laborer, unworthy of attention and respect. Now, however, I was praised for actually being a gardener, a person who creates beauty, who puts his soul into his work. Returning home after the meeting, I reflect on the strange twists and turns of fate. Who would have thought that at the age of 78 I would start a new life? That I would find a new vocation, new friends, a new meaning of existence? That I would learn to value myself not for status, not for possessions, not for the attitude of my children, but for what I do every day with my hands? At home, the first thing I do is check the mail. Among the flyers and bills, I find a letter from Hastings. Tamsin's handwriting. I open the envelope with some trepidation. The letter is short, only half a page. Tamsin writes that he and Parker are moving to another city. He's been offered a job in Manchester. He asks for my new address so he can write occasionally to let me know how they're doing. Mentions that Orson is graduating from university and Marion is dating a nice guy. Not a word of rebuke, not a plea for help or reconciliation. I put the letter away, not knowing how to feel. Relief? Sadness? Satisfaction? A little of everything, I suppose. I decide to reply tomorrow when my thoughts have settled. Before I go to bed, I go out on the terrace. The night is quiet, starry. The sea murmurs somewhere very close, reminding me of the eternity and transience of human problems. It's at times like this that I feel Miriam's absence most keenly. She loved the starry sky, could sit in the garden for hours, looking up and telling me about the constellations. "Would you approve of what I did, Miriam?" I asked quietly, looking up at the bright star just above the house. "Would you have understood?" There is no answer, of course, just the sound of the waves and the distant cry of a seagull. But somewhere deep inside, I feel that she would have understood. Miriam has always valued dignity and self-respect, always taught her children to respect others, especially their elders. She would have been saddened to know how they treated me after her death. I return to the house and get ready for bed. Tomorrow is a busy day. I need to finish the clematis, meet Eleanor for a walk along the shore, and stop by the local library for some new gardening books. Life goes on, filled with small joys and simple worries. As I lie in bed, I think about how long I've been coming to this moment, how many years I've spent trying to please the children, to earn their respect, to make up for Miriam's absence, how much energy spent trying to keep a family together that didn't really exist anymore, and how much he'd lost by not changing things sooner, how much humiliation he'd endured, how much neglect he'd swallowed, how many lonely days he'd spent in a big empty house waiting for calls that never came. Things are different now. I'm free from toxic relationships, from false hopes, from meaningless waiting. Free to be myself, not a school principal, not a father of ungrateful children, not a lonely old man. Just Eustace Baycroft, a man who, at 78, found the strength to start anew. Sometimes I wish I'd done it sooner. I wish I'd left Hastings as soon as Miriam died, settled by the sea, started a garden. How many years I could have lived differently. But then I remind myself that all in good time. Perhaps I needed to go through all that, the loneliness, the neglect, the humiliation, to truly appreciate the freedom and peace I have found now. Better late than never, Miriam used to say whenever I put off any decision or action. And she was right, as always. Better to learn to appreciate myself at 78 than to never learn it at all. I fall asleep with that thought, with the sound of the sea outside my window and a sense of peace I haven't felt in a very long time. Tomorrow will be a new day, another day of my new life, a life that I created by myself, by my own decision, by my own will. And for that, I am grateful to myself, a man who has finally learned to respect himself.